What kind of person calls the police over a flower pot? That's the question I kept turning over in my mind as I stood on my front porch, staring down two officers who looked as confused as I felt. Their patrol car's lights flashed silently, painting the dusk in red and blue, while Karen, our neighborhood's self-appointed enforcer, loomed behind them, arms crossed, her floral dress straining against her frame. Her eyes gleamed with smug satisfaction, like she'd just won some grand moral victory. I'd only moved to Willow Creek 3 months ago, a quiet suburb where the lawns were manicured and the rules were ironclad. But I never imagined my first real welcome would be Thesa's showdown over a terracotta pot of marigolds I'd placed on my front steps. Karen, the HOA president, had decided it violated some obscure bylaw about uniform aesthetic standards. I'd laughed when I got her first letter, thinking it was a joke. But now, here she was, weaponizing the law because I dared to plant flowers. My name is Lena, and I'm not the type to back down from a fight. But I also wasn't looking for one. I'd moved here to start over after a messy divorce, hoping for peace, maybe a garden to tend, and a chance to rebuild. The house was small but cozy, with a porch perfect for morning coffee. I'd spent weeks fixing it up, painting the shutters, and yes, adding that flower pot. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Karen, though, saw it as a personal affront. Her letters escalated from polite to venomous, each one accusing me of undermining the neighborhood's prestige. I ignored them, thinking she'd tire herself out. I was wrong. That evening, as the officers explained they were responding to a disturbance call, I felt my stomach twist. Karen had claimed my flower pot was a safety hazard, a tripping risk, and that I'd been hostile when she confronted me. Hostile. I'd barely spoken to her. One officer, a young guy with kind eyes, glanced at the pot and then at Karen, clearly questioning her story. The other, older and gruff, just wanted to get this over with. "Ma'am, can you move the pot?" he asked, almost apologetically. I wanted to scream that this was absurd, that I wasn't the problem. But I saw Karen smirk and knew she was waiting for me to lose it. So I nodded, tight-lipped, and said I'd comply. The officers left, and Karen strutted back to her house across the street, victorious. But something in me snapped that night. I wasn't going to let this woman bully me out of my new life. I started asking around, talking to neighbors. Most were tight-lipped, afraid of Karen's wrath, but a few opened up. There was Tom, the retired mechanic who'd been fined for leaving his garage door open too long. Sarah, a single mom, had been harassed over her son's skateboard left on the driveway. And then there was Mrs. Chun, an elderly widow who whispered that Karen had once reported her for feeding stray cats, claiming it attracted vermin. Each story painted a picture of a woman who ruled Willow Creek like a tyrant, using the HOA as her personal scepter. I realized this wasn't just about my flower pot, it was about control. I decided to fight back, but not with shouting or defiance. I'd play her game, only better. The HOA bylaws were a labyrinth of rules, but I spent nights poring over them, finding every loophole and contradiction. I discovered that Karen's own backyard shed violated height restrictions, and her dog's incessant barking breached noise ordinances she'd enforced on others. I started documenting everything: photos of her shed, recordings of her dog, even screenshots of her snide posts on the neighborhood's online forum. I wasn't alone either. Tom and Sarah joined me, and soon we had a small coalition. A quiet rebellion brewing under Karen's nose. Then came the twist I didn't see coming. While digging through old HOA records, I found something shocking. Karen hadn't been elected president. 2 years ago, the previous president had moved away, and Karen, the vice president, simply declared herself in charge. No vote, no meeting, just her assuming power. The discovery hit me like a thunderbolt. This wasn't just about petty rules. Karen was running an unauthorized regime. I shared the news with Tom and Sarah, and we agreed this was our leverage. We'd confront her at the next HOA meeting, not with accusations, but with evidence. The meeting was held in the community center, a sterile room with flickering fluorescent lights. Karen sat at the head of the table, gavel in hand, her usual air of authority unshaken. Neighbors filled the chairs, some curious, others intimidated. I felt my heart pound as I stood to speak, clutching my folder of evidence. Karen, I began, my voice steady despite the nerves. Can you confirm when you were elected HOA president? The room went silent. Her face froze, then twisted into a scowl. I've been president for 2 years. She snapped. Everyone knows that. I slid the records across the table. Pages marked with dates and signatures, or rather, the lack of them. These show no election took place. I said. You appointed yourself. Gasps rippled through the room. Karen's eyes darted, searching for an ally. But even her usual supporters looked uneasy. She stammered, claiming it was a misunderstanding. But I wasn't done. I presented the photos of her shed, the recordings of her dog, the screenshots of her bullying posts. Each piece was a blow, dismantling her facade. Sarah stood next, sharing how Karen's fines had forced her to skip meals to pay them. Tom followed, his voice shaking with years of pent-up frustration. The room turned against her, neighbors finding their courage, airing grievances they'd buried for years. Karen's composure cracked. She shouted, accusing us of a witch hunt. But the evidence was undeniable. The meeting ended with a vote unanimous, except for Karen's lone dissent to remove her as president. But the real climax came the next day, when the police returned. Not for me, but for her. Turns out, Mrs. Chen had reported Karen for harassing her over those stray cats. And our evidence of her HOA abuses prompted an investigation into her misuse of authority. The neighborhood buzzed with whispers as officers escorted her to their car, her face red with fury. Karen's fall was swift and spectacular. The HOA board, newly elected with Sarah as president, didn't stop at removing her. They banned her from holding any position in the neighborhood, citing her years of overreach. Her shed was ordered dismantled, her fines refunded, and her influence shattered. I watched from my porch as she packed boxes into a moving van a month later, her head bowed, avoiding the neighbors' gazes. Part of me felt a twinge of pity. Built her identity on control, and now it was gone. But that pity faded when I remembered the fear she'd instilled, the way she'd turned a community against itself. Willow Creek changed after that. The HOA meetings became open forums, with neighbors sharing ideas instead of complaints. Sarah rewrote the bylaws, prioritizing fairness over nitpicking. Tom started a community garden, and Mrs. Chin's stray cats got a feeding station, funded by donations. My marigold stayed on my porch, joined by more pots, each one a small act of defiance turned into pride. I'd come here looking for a fresh start, and I found something better, a community that fought for itself. Looking back, I realized Karen's call to the police wasn't just about a flower pot. It was her last desperate grasp at power, a way to remind everyone she was in charge. But she underestimated Usme, Tom, Sarah, Mrs. Chun, and every neighbor who'd had enough. We didn't just take her down. We built something better in her place. Sometimes, it takes a bully to show you what you're capable of, to remind you that home isn't just a house, it's the people who stand with you. And as I sit on my porch now, sipping coffee with marigolds blooming beside me, I know we won more than a fight. We won our neighborhood back.